heard Rally come in, and when he comes in, he talks to us, meow, 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 announcing his presence. And his meow just sounded distinctly different. And I was like, he's hurt. I didn't think he'd be meowing if he had a bird in his mouth. So I was like, I think he's hurt. And so I wanted to come out and check on him. And he's under Matt's desk with a bird.
Hello, and welcome to Middleish, the podcast about moderation in all things. I am Erin Green.
And I am Michael Gray.
You have a higher voice there. Are you trying to mimic me?
I'm always trying to mimic you, Erin.
I am Michael Gray.
I'm always trying to mimic you. Yep, just be like Erin. That's what I tell myself every morning.
Is that your motto?
BLE, yep.
You wake up and...
BLE, as I tell my kids. BLE.
I don't know if that's the greatest life.
Right?
Yeah.
BLE.
I don't know. I mean, I'm flattered, but I am not going to say that's the best life motto to have. That's a lot of pressure. Especially after we get through this episode. I think a lot of people would say, F that.
Right. So this is the point in the podcast, about 90 seconds in, where we generally ask each other, like, how are you? And so I would like to preface that with Erin. So we're getting ready to get on. It's like our time to record, right? I get a notification on my email. I'm running like 2 minutes late. I get a notification on my email. It says, Erin Green has joined Zoom, Zoom meeting. So I'm like, okay, I'm getting on. I get on here and I'm waiting for that notification to admit her. And I'm like, it's not there. Okay, where is it? And I'm waiting a minute. I'm waiting another minute. I'm like, that must be like a real lag. And then I get this text from Erin. Let me read it verbatim. It says, so Rally is her cat, as you guys know, right? Rally cat. And her text says, shit, hold on. Rally just brought in a bird.
Oh, God.
So
and
there was a bit of a delay because there's a bird in the
laugh
house.
About this, but I just have to say that it's really traumatizing for me to have to, Rally sometimes brings in birds and he just brings them in like his little new friend that he just made outside. Like, hi, look what I brought in. And the bird, if I take it and gently just take it outside, it'll fly away. And I always just tell myself, if it can fly, it can survive. So we're okay. This little one, it was too late. And but I had to take care of it. And so it was really just, your nerves are frayed anyway, because it literally was like 11:02. I'm like, okay, I'm already like, it is time to get on the air. And there's feathers all over my living room. And my cat is sitting there just like announcing this wonderful, like, look what I did, Mom.
Look at my present.
It's super. Yes.
I like that you said it like a mobster. I had to take care of it.
It is handled.
You're not going to say I killed the bird. I had to take care of that bird. Yeah.
Oh, it's so hard. And I mean, I love my cat, but cats are killers. And I always think about like they can be destructive to the environment, to the ecosystem. I mean, it's challenging. It's a double-edged sword. And so Matt and I have talked about this, our next cat, or cats, if we get a pair of cats, will likely be indoor only cats, just for the simple fact of, these things, these unpleasant things for us, but also just caring for the environment around us and, courtesy to our neighbors and all that stuff. So anyway, we'll teach him to walk on leashes and harnesses. Rally never took to that.
Erin's great. She's had a great morning.
I'm doing awesome.
Murder something, and now she's here.
But before that, I really did have a great morning. I went for a bike ride with a friend of mine, like an early morning. We met at 7 to ride. And I actually really love those earlier morning workouts, or like even earlier 6 a.m. or something where you're coming up with the sun. Mm-hmm. I love that. But when I don't have the reason to do it and that incentive, I'm kind of like, I'll wait till it warms up and I'll wait until I'm awake, but this was just a beautiful morning to go out with a friend and ride around on some some hills in the different neighborhoods that have low traffic, so we could just hang out and chat and have a nice cup of coffee afterwards. It was great. I had a great morning.
Nice.
Before Rally ruined it.
Before the bird.
Yeah.
Well, my
and how are you?
Fine. It has
birds in the
in
house.
Between your high and your lows. That's where I am. I
You're
didn't have a
like...
wonderful experience outside in the early morning, and I haven't killed anything. So it's right.
So that's well, let's not forget the spider incident with you. I was actually telling my parents about that this weekend, and I was like,
I'm looking again.
I know if you have no other reason to listen to our anniversary episode, just fast forward to that part. It's like halfway through. Yeah. And I showed them the picture, and my mom, who is also a little bit of a spider phobe, looked and immediately was like, "Oh, babies."
Yeah, that was an adventure.
I've already been through that.
Yeah, I got a message from a client just a few days ago. She was like, I just listened to your Middleish versary episode. And she's like, oh my gosh, the spider. And I was like, yeah, it was like the best/worst timing. She's like, no, it was the best timing. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was
like a perfect event for celebrating 1 year.
I think
kind
it
of
would
sums
have
up Middleish, right?
Yeah, slightly traumatizing. It really reinforced the fact that we do not rehearse things. Nothing is really planned.
This is just off the cuff, on the cuff, off the cuff, on the fly, off the cuff.
Yep.
It's on the fly, but it's off the cuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever that means. So
are you turning into Chevy Chase on Christmas Vacation, where he's like, let's burn some dust here, eat my rubber?
Let's hope so.
Where you're messing up it's very
if that's a lane I can lean into, absolutely. I have zero issues with that.
You're such a dad. I need
to invest in some Christmas lights.
Oh yeah.
40 times as many as I have.
Totally.
But I'm good with that. Yeah. So today, I'm excited about today. I get to put on my interviewer hat, and I thought way too late. Like I wish I had like a big cowboy hat that I wrote like interviewer on or something to wear.
Oh, that would be funny.
But it was like 4 minutes before we were supposed to go. I was like, shoot. But I imagine
I don't happen to have a big cowboy hat hanging out in my bedroom. I can just write with a Sharpie.
I can't find mine. I don't know where it is. So, but I get to interview Erin. So as you know, we've talked several times about this. Just recently, Erin did a very long 206-mile gravel race in Kansas. And it's something that we've kind of talked through her sort of process of getting ready for it and her struggles and frustrations a little bit on air here and there. But we thought, what a great topic to just really dive into, an experience to dive into for an episode. Just talk about what this experience was like, preparation, why she'd want to do something like this in the first place, what's wrong with her.
Exactly.
But also how this sort of like this seemingly extreme event, how does that fit within a Middleish lifestyle? And how do we make room for things that maybe are a little bit outside of Middleish in and of themselves, but keep that Middleish perspective and that kind of stuff. So we're just going to dive in and talk about this awesome thing that she did just 2 weeks ago now, I guess, as of recording.
Yeah, it's been a week and a half. Week and a half since I finished.
Okay.
So I'm still recovering.
So I bet you are. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about what the few days after were like and the few weeks after have been like. Because I imagine there's a impact. But so let's talk a little bit just about this event in general. So this is an annual event, right? It's called Outlander, right?
It's called Unbound.
Unbound. Outlander. That's
close.
That's a Netflix show my wife is watching is Outlander. You know what? And I did that about 4 times in my head. I was like, Outlander, nope, Unbound. And I was like, I'm going to do that like when we're recording. And I just freaking did. Unbound. Unbound. This is a gravel race in Emporia, Kansas.
That's right.
Which I read is like the gravel capital of
that's
the
their
US
claim
or the
to fame.
world.
Well, they say, and I'll tell the story later. One of the guys that came and congratulated me, I don't know, he had to be in his 70s or something. Old farmer guy was like, "We have the best gravel in the world here." So it's probably their claim to fame is probably the gravel capital of the world. But
I like that. My guess is that if you tell someone we're the gravel capital, they don't ask of what. Yeah. They're just like, all right, fine, you can have it. No one cares.
Yeah, fine. Yeah, cool. That's a great, make a medal and
sure, you guys got
wear your badge.
Make your trophy. No one's going to contest it. The state, the nation, the world, whatever. It's yours.
Yeah. Yeah. They actually have, Matt and I were reading about their infrastructure and economy. Lots and lots of agriculture there, obviously very strong. I think they have a strong manufacturing economy as well. They have the Tyson, one of the Tyson chicken plants there. So food processing. And then it might be the birthplace of the Hostess factory, but they do have a large Hostess factory there. And no, I did not eat any ding dongs or Twinkies.
I was going to say,
of course. I know, so disappointing.
About every 3 years, probably, I think, I'm going to eat a Twinkie. I've had a Twinkie in a long time, and I'm always disappointed when I eat them. They're never as good as they were when I was a kid. I want them to be so bad, and they're just plasticky. And I mean, they're okay, just kind of, but they're not.
The nostalgia probably tastes good, but the Twinkie itself does not.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I'm always a little disappointed, which, by the way, it's probably been about 3 years. I'm probably due for a Twinkie.
Maybe you should do that.
Maybe I should do that. Yeah, maybe I'll do it this afternoon. Yeah. So had you heard about this race before, or was it something you had just kind of heard? Okay. So how long were you aware of Unbound? I almost said
Outlander again. So it used to be called Dirty Kansas, for those of you who are familiar with the gravel racing scene and have heard that, but they changed the name I believe they changed it in 2020 because Dirty Kansas is a derogatory term referring to the Native Americans in that area. Oh. So there was a call to change the name, and the race directors got on board and agreed, and it became Unbound Gravel. So the marquee race is the 200-mile race, which I did, which actually is 206. Yes, thank you. And that 6 miles makes a big difference, and we'll tell you why. But they also have, they have lots of distances. They have everything from 25 miles, they have 50, they have 100, and then they have the XL, which is a 350-mile. Yep. And people do it all in one go. So the winners didn't sleep. They rode for an entire day, 24 hours or whatever. Or it's probably longer than that, actually, now that I think of it. But yeah, they have the roads to do it. So when you hear that they're the gravel capital, they literally have just gravel roads as far as the eye can see. And when I was preparing for this, I had spoken with a friend of mine who had done it before, and he was saying, there is nothing out there. You'd just be shocked. And I'm a farm girl. I'm from the middle of nowhere, Idaho. So I know what it's like to be out in the middle of the country with nothing but gravel roads around you and fields. And even I was shocked at the expanse of just gravel roads, maybe one or two little farmhouses checkering the fields, but just grazing land and pasture land and, agriculture.
Yeah.
So I had never really planned to do this race. It wasn't something that was on my radar. I did, take interest in gravel as I was finishing up my triathlon career. So I was interested in doing some gravel races and, checking them out and kind of reading more about which ones would be the most fun and which ones would take me to places I would really want to explore and whatever.
Like the gravel capital of the world.
Emporia, Kansas just wasn't on that list. No. But my bike partners who used to sponsor me in triathlon, and now I'm on their club team, Blue Competition Cycles, based out of Boulder, Colorado. He texts me and he's like, "Hey, we're going to be in Emporia at the expo, and we're, helping to support the race. And we got 2 guaranteed entries. So it's on a lottery system. You sign up on this list and they basically pull your name out of a hat, and you might get in and you might not.
So it's a big deal. Like
It's a big deal. It's
okay.
the biggest gravel race in the US, probably in the world, because I don't know if gravel is really that big in other places. It might
Let's
be.
say the world. We're giving them the world
Yeah.
on gravel cap. We'll give them the world on everything.
So they had over 2,000 riders do all the different
Wow.
distances. So it's huge.
Yeah.
So my friend Orly with Blue texts me and says, we have a guaranteed entry. Do you want to do it? And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so I asked Matt and he's like, why not? I mean, when are you going to get the opportunity to truly like plan for this and do it? And he's like, I mean, you're into gravel, you have the time, like do it. So I signed up.
Nice.
And I didn't realize really what I signed up for.
So when you say guaranteed entry, did you get to pick which length you wanted to do, or was it guaranteed for the 206?
No, I got to pick. It was a guaranteed like entry. And I mean, the 200, and we'll just call it that because that's what they call it, but it definitely was 206 miles. The 200 is kind of that is like the benchmark race that they have had like year after year. And that's the one that many of the pros choose to ride and that kind of thing. So,
So how about this? How about every time you say 200, I'll just say 206 behind you. Just so we acknowledge that extra 6 miles because it matters.
Because I was saying that after people would say, oh, you just rode 200 miles.
I did 206.
There were actually
for every freaking mile.
I'll just tell this quick story of these guys at the finish, these two older guys that were, I mean, obviously dressed like farmers, like locals. And I asked, they came up and they're pointing to me and Matt and they're, gesturing to him. And they're like, did you race? Or they turn to me and go, did you race? And I said, I mean, let's just paint the picture here. I'm hobbling, dressed in a helmet and my cycling kit, which is completely covered in dust and all kinds of God knows what.
Very blatant.
And I've got dust on my face. My sunglasses are on my head. I look zombified. Did you race or did you race? I'm like, it's quite obvious, but yes, I raced.
What do you think? I just fell down in the dirt?
Exactly. I just like to sit in, the ditch and let the dust blow on me. And I said, he goes, you just rode 200 miles. And I said, 206 miles. And his buddy is standing there and they continue to kind of ask me about the race, brag about the gravel capital of the world. We have the best gravel roads anywhere. And his buddy was like, so you just crossed the finish line. You just finished your 200 miles. And I'm like, 206. Don't forget that 6.
Don't forget that 6.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk real quick about gravel and why there's a gravel scene, right? And how it's different from racing on the road or, mountain bike. What makes it something that people are more interested in? Why were you interested in the first place? Just kind of walk us through it. Because I think that obviously that's something that's really unique to this. Sure. And I have my speculations as to what makes it different or unique or more challenging, but I also don't know. So why don't you talk to us about gravel?
Well, gravel has been around for a long time, the gravel riding scene, but it has really taken off. And I would say the last 4 or 5 years, it's really gained a lot of popularity. And the main difference is, I mean, you have a different bike. It's not a mountain bike. It's not a road bike. A lot of people will use cyclocross bikes. So bikes that you race cyclocross with, which is kind of an obstacle course racing, not quite mountain biking. You can do it on a mountain bike, but a gravel bike will be faster.
We're looking at wider tires.
Yep. Wider tires.
Tread.
Yep, exactly. Okay. It'll have a little bit of knobby tread on it. Usually a gravel bike will have a little bit more substantial handlebar. So you can grip and have a little better steering. It'll be a bit wider. The frame is a little bit more robust. So you can
heavier,
then
probably.
Say it. Well, actually they're pretty light. I mean, gravel bikes are, you can get top end gravel bikes will, be as light as probably like 13 pounds or something. I mean, they're really, they might even be lighter than that, but they're really not much heavier than a road bike unless, I mean, you're running a setup that doesn't have tubes in the tires. Usually you'll have, what they call tubeless, which is you basically seat the tire on the rim of the wheel and then you put sealant in there. So if you do get a puncture, the sealant will, you have the rotational force that's rolling the sealant around in the tire, and it's these little rubber particles based in liquid, that like a latex liquid, that seal up the hole if you get a puncture. So
very cool.
That adds a tiny bit of weight. And then of course, just a little bit more robust frame, probably more robust tires. So it'll be heavier than a road bike. But honestly, the technology has really, you can get some really lightweight and nimble gravel bikes. So yeah, different equipment. The surface obviously is very different from pavement. So you're generally going slower, taking corners easier, picking your lines. So it's a lot like in mountain biking, they talk about picking your lines. So when you're going down the trail, there's little obstacles, right? There's roots and there's holes and there's rocks and different things. You have to sort of pick your line around these things to have, to keep rolling. Gravel is very similar. It's just you're on the whole road. And so you're looking for different lines and ways that you can navigate this. And a lot of gravel roads will have a couple wheel marks kind of born into them. And so the gravel sort of piles up in different areas. And then you have these 2 like lanes or 3 lanes that is much more like riding on pavement, because it's just kind of like packed, smooth dirt or micro gravel. And honestly, I think the reason it has taken off so much is because road riding gets more and more dangerous every year.
I can see that.
We hear about a lot of fatalities, and roads are getting busier. There's a lot of distracted driving out there. And that was one of the motivators for me to shift from triathlon, as I was spending hundreds of miles a year on highways and on roadways. And I have lights and cameras and bright colored kits and like everything to make myself visible. And it still was, it was nerve wracking every time. So on gravel, cars tend to drive slower. You certainly don't get the same amount of traffic.
Right.
Generally you're in remote places where you're just not going to run into as many cars. And people, especially in Idaho where it's very scenic, people are generally just looking around more at the scenery, and they'll notice a bike out there more so than like on a highway. So I think that's why gravel has really taken off. And then, cyclists are realizing that you can see different parts of the countryside that you just can't see from the pavement. Like it just takes you out. You can ride nearly anywhere on a gravel bike. So that's really cool. It's just that accessibility to, some of these scenic places.
Absolutely. Do you have to, like, technically, do you have to ride a little differently at all?
Yeah. With road biking, if you're on pavement and if you're riding with people, of course you have to pay attention to what's going on in front of you, but you really can just cruise. You can kind of soft pedal, you can just spin it out and keep it easy. With gravel riding, depending on the surface, there are lots of gravel roads out there that are flat and easy and smooth. But this course in particular was certainly not. And I used a lot of my mountain biking skills on pieces of this course, because depending on the surface, like in Emporia, we rode in the Flint Hills, and Flint is what they make arrowheads out of. So you can imagine how sharp it was and how chunky that rock gets, and how it's really important to pick your line and to hit things. If you're going to hit a sharp rock or something that you don't want to, but this is where I'm going and I just have to, you might have to pick up your front tire. You might have to like pedal a little bit more softly through it. You might have to, just kind of scrub a little bit of speed so that you can be a little bit more gentle with your bike, so that you're not getting, there were tons of flat tires out there, and
I can
it's
imagine.
very, very rough. Yeah. It's very rough on a bike. So it is different. I think it's really good to have some mountain bike skills when you're getting into gravel, but then again, there's lots of gravel roads where if you just ride, smooth gravel and you're not going to go on any gnarly courses, you can easily get, a really nice handle just by riding a little bit of gravel and getting a feel for it.
Sure. Okay. All right. So talk us through, let's go from like when you're leaving, like you're packed up, ready to go, just kind of the trip to Emporia and up to race day. What was your trip there like?
Yeah. So I had come up with the bright idea with Matt that we would just take our pickup and our camper. We have a camper top. It's from Go Fast Campers out of Bozeman, Montana. I'm like, okay, we'll pack up our camper. We've got all, Matt's been accessorizing it all winter and spring. Let's drive over there. And Matt's game for it. Okay, cool. Well, as we get closer to, you need to block out your calendar for like a week because it's a 20-hour drive. He was starting to question our life decisions at that point.
How did we get
and just like Matt and I are pretty good about organization and getting prepared. We've done this enough, but when you're throwing a road trip and camping into the mix, I mean, there's a lot of prep that goes into it. And we left.
Got to pack all your food for a week. And there's a lot more than just preparing for the race.
And then just the race gear itself. So we're fully loaded. We left right after work on Tuesday. And the race is on that Saturday. And we drove, we just broke it up into reasonable chunks on the road, but we really just stuck to freeway. There's so many cool places because we went, from Idaho down south into Utah. And then you head east as soon as you hit Ogden, which is just north of Salt Lake. And you just basically head east. So we went through Wyoming and then Colorado and then into Kansas. So there's so many cool little state parks and places, if you get off the beaten path, we easily could have gotten into some really cool places, but we just didn't have the time. Sure. So if given that to do over again, we'd probably try and plan a little bit more time to do some exploration. Sure. But travel really went pretty smoothly. It was a lot of, commenting on other people's driving that was just like, on the freeway. Yeah. Just, keeping your head up. And we camped at KOAs on the way there just to keep it super easy. They're right off the freeway, nothing extravagant, but had a really nice, pretty easy trip over there. And Matt kept saying like, I hear that Western Kansas and Eastern Colorado is like the most boring part of the US to ride or to drive through because it's just flat and there's just farmland and there's nothing but interstate. And it was pretty close to that. There's like some wind farms and we listened to audiobooks and had good conversation. We listened to music. We did all right, so good. It's pretty smooth traveling over.
Yeah. Did you go through Wyoming to get there? Is that how you went? See, I think Wyoming is some of the most, that stretch of like southern Wyoming, like to get down to Kansas from Idaho, is like, it's just like, it's the same 10 seconds on repeat.
Yes.
For like 700 miles. It's like, what is happening?
I know. Yeah. It was not a scenic, beautiful drive, but it went smoothly. We arrived Thursday before the race around noon, like midday. And we ended up camping at the fairgrounds there, which is so funny because the guy that was running the place was just the friendliest guy, very talkative, and he was selling it, man. He was on his phone all the time. So he's running around in his little Polaris, whatever, his little 4x4, you know, picking people up and driving them to their campsites. And he'd answer the phone and he would just sell it. Oh yeah, we got hot showers. We got all the hot water you want. Oh, we got shade. We got open space. We got full hookups, blah, blah, blah. And he had this great accent. I don't know where he's originally from, but so we were welcomed into Emporia, camped at the fairgrounds. Completely anybody who knows triathlon and knows elite racing who's listening to this might already anticipate that this was a completely different race than what I would normally do for triathlon.
Yeah, I can imagine. Okay. So we've got there, right? You're at the race, you're ready to go. Okay. So let's back up a little bit before we get into the race and let's just talk about preparation. Okay. So you'd never done a race like this before, correct?
Nothing this big.
Had you done a race? I don't know how far you race in an Ironman, but had you done any bike race this long?
No. So an Ironman is 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and a 26.2 mile run. So it's for me in my pro racing career, let's kind of average out a 10-hour day. That's kind of what I was used to doing. Okay. So when you put it into a time span, that is about what I was used to doing. And my body had seen that before many times and was used to it. This race I was thinking if I had a really, really stellar day, I could probably do it in about 13 hours.
Okay.
So if I have the best day possible, I'm already well beyond what I would typically do and what my body has seen before. And one of the interesting things that I now know is that each hour beyond what your body has seen before and what you're used to seeing is exponentially harder. It compounds each hour you're out there beyond what you're used to seeing. Yeah. It was more than I bargained for. Let's just say that.
I bet. So it's longest race you've ever done, a different environment than you've done before, right? So how do you approach like preparation for this? How do you, what did your prep look like?
Well, I had already told myself I wasn't going to race this with that pro mindset because I know where that takes me. And I know the kind of focus and dedication and single-mindedness that is required of that. And plus I just didn't have the lead time. A lot of people that were preparing for this in the pro field had been preparing for it for months or even all year.
Sure. How long did you have to prepare?
Well, I mean, I knew I was doing it. I think I had 3.5 months out when I knew that I was going to sign up for it.
That's not very long.
And I'm reasonably fit. So I was kind of telling myself, I know how to do 10 hours. Like I can go out and race 10 hours, but and if I'm not racing at a super hard level, I know my body can handle, I'm seasoned enough. I can do this.
Sure.
At the same time, I was also very aware that my riding isn't where it needs to be. Like I spent the winter, doing some weightlifting and some skiing and riding the trainer whenever I felt like it, maybe going for some runs. Like I just stayed like normal person, healthy fit, not like race fit for something crazy.
Right.
And so I hired my former coach for triathlon, Marilyn Chakota, hired her back because she actually was going to do this race until the pandemic happened and all that. So she'd done a bunch of recon and was ready to help me out. And I needed that because I needed to have an 8-hour training ride put in my schedule and force me to do it,
Yeah.
So, most of my training was the longest ride I would do on a weekday was around 2 hours, really. Okay. I did a combination of road riding, gravel riding, and mountain biking. And I had a couple great friends that would hop into rides with me whenever I wanted and do some of the big long stuff. My buddy Troy did, most of my really long rides, my 7 to 9 hour rides with me. Wow. My friend Lucy would do like all my, hard over under workouts. She was game for it. She was always jumping in and what do you got today? So I had friends, I had a support system, and then I allowed myself some flexibility. This was something very different from triathlon training that I used to do. I would have a specific ride on my schedule that was like a structured ride. It had like intervals and very specific timing of different efforts during the ride. And I would look at it and say, well, I'm doing date night with Matt. So we're going to go mountain biking and that's going to be my ride. So I let go of some of that structure. And this is, I think, where a Middleish concept kind of comes into play is I let go of some of that rigidity and type A approach to this race and said, I need to be prepared. I know that it's important for me to work some of the, the top end, like the really hard efforts to do the volume, to be consistent with my riding. Yet I'm going to allow some flexibility because there are other pieces of my life that are really important to me, like time with my husband and mountain biking and switching it up. So,
Okay. So, I mean, it probably got more intense as you got closer, but on average, like how often were you riding during the week and what were those like? And then what were weekend rides like?
Yeah, I would ride. I mean, I almost rode daily during the whole prep. My coach was very supportive of throwing in, she knows I like trail running. And one of the things is, if you're a pure cyclist, you will not run. Like that is like sacrilege. You don't want to spend extra time on your feet. You won't even go out for like a little walk or something. So for me to go mix in some running and some different activities was more for my mental health and the fact that I like running and I don't want to let that go too far because it, as you get older, it gets harder to get back into it. So I would probably ride, I mean, on average, I would say most of my weeks were between the 15 to 17-hour mark in terms of training time, total time training. I had a couple that were up there close to 20. I had several that were lower, like in the 13 to 12-hour range. But I basically was riding every day. It just depended on the day, if I had time to do an hour ride or a 2-hour ride. And I kind of just mixed it up. If I missed a workout on one day, I'd, kind of adjust so I could put that volume in on another day, but
Right.
I was pretty much riding daily.
Okay. So again, there's that Middleish approach in there of being flexible, of nothing set in stone, of adapting and bending and flexing as you need to. Love it. So how did you change your nutrition at all? Like, how did that, you just kind of stuck with what you were doing?
I got hungrier. That's about it. I did notice that my appetite, it's funny, the last, couple years that I've been in retirement, so to speak, like I have not been doing that very demanding Ironman training. I've noticed my appetite just naturally has, softened. I don't get as hangry. I don't eat quite as much as often throughout the day. This definitely changed that. And I could feel my appetite get stronger. Right. The one thing I did change is I would really pay more attention to recovery nutrition because I'm only training for one discipline. And therefore I would have more intense, bike rides a little more often throughout the week than I typically would in Ironman training structure. You're doing swims and runs and different things in between. You might need a little more recovery. On the bike, you can really, kind of dig in. And so recovery nutrition was a big factor, but no, I don't really change much. Which again, I think is another Middleish kind of concept for people to take away, because they think that at this elite level, you have to do something really special with your diet or, change it in a way. But I really just eat for overall health and enjoyment, like 90% of the time. And then there are these instances where I really need to target certain nutrients and eating habits to help me, with some of this more extreme stuff.
Sure. Okay. All right. So let's fast forward now. Okay. It's race day. You're there, right?
I'm there.
You're there. We're getting ready to go. What's going on? What are you feeling? What are you experiencing?
So
what are you doing?
One of my friends, Nicole Caldwell, is I know her from Ironman days, and she is now an elite cyclist and formerly on a pro women's team. And she was there and she was camping at the fairgrounds as well. And so we made a plan to ride over together. And one thing my husband said I need to make sure I convey is just how long this day is, like what to wrap your head around it. So imagine your alarm going off for 30 in the morning and you're getting ready in the dark. And this is nothing new to me. This is how Ironman was, but we got on our bikes. Nicole and I rode down to the start together on 5:30. The start was at 6 a.m. And by the time we got downtown, it's starting to get light out, but just picture yourself in that early morning hours, like just when dawn is hitting and you're just starting to see light hit different things and you're just starting to get your bearings. Many times on any given day, the energy is almost one of, man, I'm getting a head start. Like I'm ahead of everybody else. I'm out of bed before everyone else. But there's there were 907. I have the numbers here. 907 people started that 200-mile day. And so all of these 206, thank you. All of these riders are downtown in Emporia, and you have to find your way through and get on the start line. And I just, the energy that you get that early in the morning it is like that all day. So you turn on as soon as you get up in the morning and you are carrying that with you all day. If you're lucky. I mean, there are some days when you just can't carry that energy all the way through, but we got to the start line, lined up. We lined up toward the front, which I'll tell you I don't think it was a bad choice, but I don't think I was quite ready for the really hot pace that was going to roll out of Emporia because, I mean, you have a 206-mile day ahead of you. I'm thinking, okay, these guys, they're pure cyclists. I'm lined up behind Grand Tour riders. So like the guys that have ridden the Tour de France and are, I mean, legit pro cyclists, male pro cyclists. And they take it out of town and holy crap, it's flat for like the first half hour. And you are just, I mean, I was looking at my numbers, like my heart rate, my power numbers, how hard I'm going, and I can feel it. And I'm like, this is unsustainable in the biggest way. Like I'm in trouble if I keep doing this.
Oh man.
And you're in this huge group. And part of it is you don't want to lose contact with some of that front group if you're a strong enough rider, because later in the day, if there's wind, you know, you can work together and it's nice to have people around you. And so I'm telling myself, like, I need to stay with this big group. And I'm looking at the numbers and I'm like, this is a bad idea. Like, I don't know. And I looked around at one of the, people riding around me and I said, am I the only person riding 200 miles today? Like, is everybody else cutting it at mile 50 or something? Because this is crazy, like this pace we were doing. And about an hour and a half into the race, and I will say I did a really good job of starting my nutrition early. Like 20 minutes in, I was taking some food.
Gummy worms?
But I didn't have any gummy worms, but I took them with me, Michael. You
didn't eat any? Oh,
I could not.
You know what? I'm uninterested anymore. We're done.
Oh, are you going to cut this? Cut. We're done.
We're done.
I couldn't eat anything sweet. It didn't appeal to me.
I can see that.
Eat a truckload of pickles and Fritos and pizza. And sports drink. That was kind of how things came to pass.
I can see how I want something sweet.
Coming around the corner around hour and a half in, and I turn this corner and all you can see, the way I describe the gravel roads out there, first of all, road is kind of a loose term because a lot of these gravel tracks are used by farmers to get from one field to another, like in their tractor or on a 4x4.
Yeah, it's not even a road.
It's like just this kind of track with grass in the middle of it, you know? So I turn this corner and as far as I can see, it's just straight road, but it's like wave sets up and down, just walls of gravel, up, down, just hills, never ending, straight hills. It was incredible. I almost stopped to take a picture because I was like, okay, this farm girl has never seen anything like that before.
Right. I bet. So I'm going to share some pictures from the race as we continue to talk.
This is Lauren De Crescenzo who won the women's race.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, she's amazing.
A little over 12 hours. Wow.
Yeah, crazy.
Wow.
So I will say one of my favorite parts of the race, and I might be jumping ahead, you might be asking me this question later, was the very start. I was nervous as hell for the start because you're starting with these pro cyclists. And I mean, I knew they were going to go hard, it's this cacophony of gravel and tires on the gravel and the shifting of the bikes and the drivetrain and the pedals and people chattering and talking in the peloton and like trying to, there's a corner coming up or we're slowing down or whatever. So there's just all of this like noise and your head's up and see that gravel.
Yeah,
if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see some of this chunky stuff.
That doesn't look fun. That looks steep.
It's hard. And you're hearing all of this noise around you, yet if you have a chance to look up and just kind of gaze out at the fields anywhere, it's this serene, just pasture land and farmland with the sun coming up. So you get those long shadows and it's cooler in the morning. It's very hot over there later in the day. So you kind of have this nice respite of cool, damp air that you're riding through. So it was this just really cool dichotomy of like crazy energy and this like stampede of bikes with this dust plowing up like a wildebeest stampede coming down the road. Yet there's this beautiful, serene setting around you. It's really cool.
I bet it's amazing. And so in this picture, yeah, you had to ride through water at one point?
Yep. There at a few points, there were some creek crossings. We actually lucked out and didn't have much rain. That's a smart guy dunking his head in the stream. We didn't have a ton of rain leading up to the race in that week leading up. And so the creek crossings were very manageable. There was less mud, but they have had years when it's been like just crazy sloppy conditions. And I am so thankful for that because I might not have finished.
Yeah, I bet. I'm looking at this, and this isn't what I have in mind when I think of gravel. So when I think of gravel, I think, like little small, little bits of rock, little pebbles that they used to pave or whatever people using. These are like big chunks of rock. Like this is not gravel in what I have in my mind. This is a little different. Holy crap.
Hence the reason why my mountain bike skills came in handy, because it was different than what I expected. And probably my most used phrase telling people about this race is that I really underestimated that course and just how hard it would be. And that chunky stuff, I felt like I managed it really well. My bike handled it well. I did not get a single flat, which was incredible because I was told, well, every rider, I mean, you carry a couple tubes. So you don't have tubes in your tires to start, but if you get enough flats, you need to put a tube in.
Sure.
You carry extra CO2 cartridges, which are just quick little, you can air up your tire real quick. You carry a pump. There's all kinds of stuff you need to carry with you. Sure. So they hand out paint stirring sticks, like the kind you get at the hardware store. They hand those out in your race packet so you can scrape the mud off of your tires and frame and your drivetrain, because it can get so bad and so sticky that you just can't pedal your bicycle.
Interesting. That's crazy. So no flat tires. Did you have any mechanical issues?
I did not. Kudos to Blue, because that bike handled everything. Yeah.
For real.
And I will say, Matt always says, like, you're a pretty delicate rider, meaning I will select my line very carefully. I'm a lighter weight person. So if I hit something really hard, you just don't have quite the impact. Sure. I can get away with a little bit lower pressure for a more cushy ride and maybe like to protect against as many flat tires. So it really worked out for me. And I was very fortunate in that sense, because there were a lot of flats and mechanicals out there.
Yeah, I can imagine looking at that stuff. Jeez.
Yeah.
So what was either the toughest section of the race as far as terrain goes, or toughest just like physically, emotionally, mentally for you?
That's a
Where was the
good question.
Suck factor highest?
Where was the suck factor the highest? Man, that's hard to say, because
206 miles.
There's a lot of suck going on in that 206. I had moments in the race where I really questioned my ability to finish. And that was a very tough reality for me, because coming from pro racing, I never questioned my ability to finish an Ironman. I questioned my ability to hold a certain pace in an Ironman, or to, have a certain outcome, or to continue pushing the way I was. But I never questioned my ability to close the distance and to just finish physically. Sure. I had moments that day where the way I was feeling, I mean, sure, I can keep pedaling right now in this moment, but I am feeling in a really bad way, where I've been in the med tent after races before. I know what leads to that. And I was feeling that at like 100 miles in, where there is nothing around you. There's a little podunk town that you might, limp your way over to.
Yikes.
So I would say a couple of the toughest points were, early on in the race, we had some really kind of technical sections that had mud involved in them. And I was following at that point, I was still following quite a few riders. And so I was just trying to keep contact with those groups. And if I hadn't seen another racer down covered in mud that had just wrecked in this rut, I might be there with them. So there were a couple spots early on where I really had to just really manage the technical aspects, slow it down a bit. And I know it doesn't sound very scary, but when you've put so much into getting to this huge long day, the last thing you want to do is crash out. And I don't want to crash and hurt myself either and like have a broken bone that then I'm out for the rest of the summer. This isn't my job anymore. Like, I want to have a good day. And so managing that aspect and really telling myself like what is worth the risk of, bombing down this descent really quickly, or, just taking a chill pill and not being afraid either, and jamming on your brakes. And then you go over your handlebars and screw up your body anyway. The most technical section was this area called Little Egypt Road. And you when you were going through those pictures, there was a picture of them climbing out where you were like, whoa, that gravel's really chunky. That's Little Egypt Road. And it's I don't remember the percentage that you get to on that grade, but it is, I mean, you saw people were walking their bikes out of it.
It looks steep in pictures, it's steeper in real life.
Yeah, exactly. So I had met up with a couple other riders. This is one of the cool parts, is everybody out there was super like just awesome attitudes, very welcoming. They'd chat you up. They'd get to know you. I'm from here, let's ride together. So the vibe was just really cool.
Awesome.
And I had met up with a couple of riders who they had done this before, and they were kind of telling me there's this really technical section coming up. And of course, in my mind, I'm like, oh shit, what did I just ride for the last 90 miles? If this is the most technical section, what are you talking about?
That was easy.
And this guy who was with me and this other girl were kind of like coaching us through. Like, I mean, you could just tell he was a mountain biker, and he was like, follow my line. And then he's like, you guys are stronger than me. Get up front there and stay to the left, so he was kind of coaching us through and just encouraging us. And it was a really, really cool, part of the race to kind of have that camaraderie with these other riders, but then also be just like at my max in terms of technical ability and my ability to push up this hill and actually grind it out. I would say mentally, one of the hardest points, I had texted Matt. So the format of the race, just real quick, is you start the race obviously fully loaded with your gear and your nutrition. And then there's one checkpoint with you have to have a SAG vehicle and a team or a person there to carry all your food and water refills and anything you might need at this checkpoint. So the first checkpoint was, I think, mile 69 or something like that. And then the Unbound race organizers have 2 water stops, one at mile like 102 and then another one at mile 125-ish. And so that's just water at those 2 checkpoints. So you have to carry all of your food and energy and electrolyte needs for nearly 100 miles. And then your second checkpoint with your team or your SAG wagon is then at like mile 157 or 158, something like that.
Oh, wow.
So that's the format of the race. So you have these, you can break it up into legs, like, okay, the first, 50 some miles is this, and then blah, blah, blah. So I had gotten through the really technical Little Egypt Road section. I got to that, made it to the first water oasis. I've got all my, food that I had carried from my checkpoint with Matt. I get to mile 125-ish or wherever that second water oasis is. Obviously, there's no food there. It's just water. It's very cold, delicious, wonderful water, but it is just water. And I literally rolled into that thing thinking I had left the other water oasis at mile 100. It's just 23 miles ago, but it took me like over 2 hours to get there. I mean, it felt so long. And I had cell reception. So I texted Matt and I said, I'm at the second water stop. It's taking everything I have to keep going. And I meant it. Like that was the first time I truly questioned, is this even realistic for me physically? Because we had worked so hard to get to that next water stop. I was like, how many more hills are there? How much more? And it's the hottest part of the day. So the humidity over there is in the 80% range and it's 88 degrees and there is zero shade. I mean, in the park, there's shade, but I texted Matt and told him, and he was like, okay, I'm here and I'm ready. And there were riders going around literally like panhandling for salt and electrolytes from other riders. Like, do you have any extra salt tablets? Do you have any extra electrolytes? And I had thrown a couple extra tablets in my bike pack thinking I wouldn't need them. And I had drained my 2-liter Camelback since the previous one. Wow. So I was like, okay, I'm going to use these little electrolyte tablets.
Sorry.
Yeah, I don't have any to spare. You're on your own. And there was a girl there who was going to go to the local market in this tiny little town to get a salt shaker because she's like, I've done enough endurance events. I know what my body needs, but I have no salt. And there's nowhere to like go to a store and get sports nutrition stuff. Right. So you're left to like survival mode.
Wow.
And I think crazy. that was a dropout point for a lot of riders. And the next, you tell yourself, oh, it's only 30 miles until I see Matt again. But when you're averaging, anywhere between 10 to 13 miles an hour, all of a sudden that gets to be a very, very long, like it's really hard to wrap your head around the time that's 2.5 necessary.
hours or so. That's a long time.
And that's where a lot of like, I'll just offer up right now that the self-talk that was required to get myself through those really hard points is what we talk about on this podcast all the time.
Yeah.
So I had this kind of golden, if I have the greatest day, my fitness and my nutrition and everything aligns, this is what I could do. That's long gone. And now I'm in this place of just like surviving the day. Like, how can I get to that finish line? Like, how do I manage this and really shift my expectations? I shifted how I talk to myself about the day. I shifted my goals each hill or each mile or each set of 10 miles. I just shifted how I approached that mentally instead of getting into this horrible negative place of you suck. Why did you even think you could do 13 hours? Why did you even think you could do this race? You don't even see another rider. Like there's all of this stuff that was creeping into my head, admittedly, because I come from an elite background of racing. And so it's hard. I told Matt afterward, falling from grace is kind of rough. And I don't mean that as in I was ever like, I know I was a mediocre pro. So it's not like I was winning races and I'm, this big deal, but my mindset had to be in a completely different place in this event to just be like present with what my body can do right now in this moment. And how that changes my approach to the entire day to keep those mental demons from coming in. Because I easily could have been like, yeah, F this. I am not even close to the front. What am I even thinking? It's embarrassing. Why am I doing, like I could have gone into that dark rabbit hole very easily. And I'm very, very proud that I didn't, because that is what got me to the finish line.
Right. What a beautiful illustration of anything we do. Right. I mean, we talk about this all the time. Like, shit's going to go sideways. It just does. It goes different than you planned. And having plans is really great. And it's a really good idea. But when it goes differently than you planned, that doesn't mean it's going wrong. It's just going differently. And you got to adapt and you got to, what a perfect illustration. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So you crossed the finish line.
Where are we at? Oh, well, I have one more story in between.
We're not to
there.
The finish line.
We're not to the finish line. Oh gosh, it's a long day, you guys. It is a long ass day. So just think about that early morning, pre-sunrise wake up. I'm watching the sun get low in the sky.
Sun's getting kind of low.
And I still have like 4 hours to ride. I mean, it's like this very stark reality that holy shit, this is taking a lot longer than I thought. I get into that second checkpoint with Matt, and I had told him at the first one, he was texting me. I could see on my little computer, he would shoot me texts and encouragement or tell me where he was at the checkpoints. And that first checkpoint, he was like, you're crushing it. You're going so fast, blah, blah, blah. I'm ready for a quick transition. And I rolled in there and I was like, hold on. I need to take a step back and chill the F out because I need to bring it down a notch. Like I really knew like I had burned some matches. Let's just chill out. So I roll into the second one. And meanwhile, he had gotten that text from me, hours before. And then he couldn't see my updates from my bike computer because there was no cell service. So he was wondering, is she okay? Like, where is she? And that whole way, there's people, I tell people it was like the Civil War. There's just bodies laying in the ditches on the side of the road because people were just done. Like they were dropping out. So the dropout rate was over 30%.
Whoa.
Over 30% of the field did not
That's
finish.
Huge.
It was like 304 people didn't finish or something. So it was wild. And I rolled into that second checkpoint with Matt. He's, of course, relieved to see me. And I totally took my time. I sat down in a chair. I hosed off my face. I ate a ton of pickles. And I had this cold pizza that I had put in the cooler the night before. And I start just mowing into that. But you have to be careful because you eat too much at once and you still have 50 some miles to ride in the heat. This could go south real quickly. And so I ate part of it and I was like, okay, I need to let that go. And, ate some other things and kind of collected myself, checked on my friend Nicole and some other riders, how are things going? And Nicole's husband was there at the checkpoint with Matt. And I had the pizza sitting there on the table and I'm like, should I take that with me? I don't know. Should I just stuff it in my pack? I might eat it. I don't know if I'm going to stop and eat. And Dylan, her husband, just looks at me and goes, take that pizza. I was like, okay. So I stuff it in my pack and I get to riding. I met some guy from Missouri that we rode it together and we're chatting. But you had to work for every single mile. Like you're going up these hills and I could see my speed there 5 miles an hour.
Yeah.
This is a far cry from the 15 mile per hour average that I was aiming for. Right. And so again, that mental, like you have to talk your way through that and be like, but it's faster on the downhills, but there will be a flat section again, but you can use, a crosswind at some point and get through this. There was a lot of wind out there too.
I bet.
But I stopped in the middle of nowhere on the side of that road and ate that pizza about an hour later. And I swear to God, it brought me back to life. Like that saved me. So that was pro tip. I could have eaten more food that day for sure. It's kind of amazing how much, think of how much you eat in just a standard day when you're not doing some crazy 200-mile bike race.
Yeah.
So
pizza saves lives.
Pizza saves lives. That's
going on a mug too.
That's
pizza
going on a mug too. Yeah.
That needs to go on a mug. Yeah. You know what?
I like
for
that
a
one
lot
better.
of reasons. I like pizza saves lives a whole lot.
That is, yeah. So yeah. And then I knew the last 10 miles of the course. And I had other riders around me, but you're getting later in the day where, I already talked about like the Civil War situation and like people are dropping out and you just have fewer riders around you.
Sure.
And I remember that final 10 miles, I had ridden an out and back with Matt the day before. So I knew what that final 10 miles looked like. And once I hit that section, it was flat and it's just kind of, you're on a grid system again, where it's like right turn, left turn, all the way into town. And I got that second wind and that like, I could smell the barns, so to speak, like I'm on my way and the sun is going down. And I knew I had good lights with me. So if I had to stop and put like a bona fide spotlight on my helmet, I could. But just riding that final stretch into town was this surreal, just culmination of the day. I had ridden from sunup, pre-sunup, because I rode to the start.
Right.
To sundown in June. We're nearing the solstice. Like it's insane.
Yeah, days are long. Yeah.
You get the long shadows, you get, I'm a farm girl, the settling of the dust in the valleys and just that coolness that comes in and the, seeing the crops in the fields. Like it just was a very beautiful experience for me. And knowing that I was able to do this thing, of course, there was some racing involved, but it was so far removed from what I had expected to experience and what I had kind of talked myself into that it's hard to put into words what such a long day and how much happened and how much ground you covered and all of the thoughts that were in your head the whole time and the conversations you had and the people you met. It's just crazy. And we crossed the finish line, me and this other guy whose computer died. So he needed to know the remainder of the course coming into finish. So he like came up on my wheel and was like, I have to stay with you because I don't know where I'm going. So yeah, cross the finish line after dark.
After dark.
Just after sundown.
Okay. So sun goes down, you cross finish line. What are you experiencing and feeling? Like, how do you feel physically? How do you feel mentally, emotionally? What's going on?
Well, I mean, of course, that much time on the bike, your body hurts. Like and the funny thing is the things that I expected to really hurt didn't really hurt. But there were things like my feet and my toes were really hurting. And I've ridden long distances in my shoes and, in this whole setup before. So I was really surprised how my feet and my toes, and they were tingly for days after. In fact, I still have a little bit of tingly kind of things going on in my fingers and toes, but my feet hurt. My undercarriage, of course, was tender. My muscles were sore, which was kind of surprising because I get that from running. Like at an Ironman, you get the jostling and the really hard impact on your muscles. And so you start walking after the race and everything is sore, like getting up from a seated position hurts. And I had that after crossing the finish line, which I had never really had from a really had that level of ache and soreness right off the bike before. So that was a testament to how hard the day was. And I remember feeling just a little delirious. Like I had spotted Matt, so I knew where he was. He came and helped me, walk out, got my bike. And it was so late at night that I was just like, I don't even know, like, do I eat dinner now? Like it just was so different from anything I had really experienced, and just, I did not feel nauseated or like I was going to pass out or like I needed to lay down with my feet up. That was all stuff I had experienced with Ironman. I could walk and I was reasonably functional. My brain was with me, but man, I was empty in a different kind of way than I ever had before. People, those two guys came up, were talking to me, you rode 200 miles and all this stuff. And I just was like,
206.
Yeah, exactly. And they're like, we'll see you next year. And I said, no, you won't.
Nope. Once is enough.
So we went and got food. Man. We actually found out after the race that this little ice cream shop, it's a chain called Brahms that is kind of famous for their ice cream. And they have drive-in kind of food. So like burgers and tater tots and chicken strips and onion rings and stuff. And so we went and got some chicken strips and sat in the parking lot and just, they tasted so good.
I bet.
Again, that savory, salty thing was the theme of the day. So,
yeah. So what was it like for you for the next couple of days? Like, how'd you feel just, physically and stuff over the next 2-3 days? Cause you didn't drive back immediately, correct? Or did you?
Well, we left the next day to Boulder, Colorado, and stayed with friends.
Okay. So what was it? Yeah. What were the next few days like for you, just recovery wise, as far as your body and just your plan for recovery?
Right. Well, I mean, there's only so much you can do when you're in a car. We stopped as much as we could and moved around and walked around a little bit, which is helpful. But really it was just having food available, eating substantial food.
But your appetite was huge.
My appetite went crazy. And it was really bizarre too, because I've had this happen in after endurance events before, where I eat and I'm very full and I'm just really like turned off by food. I'm like, okay, I'm way too full. Like I need to, that was too much. But then when I get hungry again, it is like DEFCON 5, feed me now. Yeah. So I had the really bizarre, strong appetite swings. We just had lots of snacks in the car and we, made sure we stopped for food. We had sandwich makings. And so we could just stop and make like a tailgate sandwich. And our good friends, Shelby and Brian, who live in Boulder, Colorado, she was texting me. She's like, are you going to come through Boulder? And we would love to have you and blah, blah, blah. And so, and she has hosted me for Ironman Boulder and 70.3 Boulder before. And so she just is wonderful and she gets it, right? She's got these recovery boots, these Normatec recovery boots, they have like the air pump and just anyway. So she's like, you should come stay with us. And so Matt's like, 8-hour drive. Yeah, we got that. And so we hopped in the car and made it to Boulder, Colorado. And I went for an easy spin with her the next day. So this is, the first day after the race was pretty much just driving and like a little bit of kind of walking around. But then the next day I went for an easy spin with her, and I'm talking easy because I could push the pedals and my body actually felt okay when I was just spinning really lightly. But if I had to climb a hill or demand anything of my system, it was like an engine stalling. It was just like, nope,
no,
none of that happening. And even some unexpected kind of nausea. And like, you just really have to interpret those cues from your body and know when enough is enough. So we went for a super easy, chill spin. And it actually really helps with recovery to do something like that, because it gets the, gets the blood flowing and, kind of gets your metabolism, working in the proper way, and just feels really good on your muscles. So
yeah.
And then Matt and I drove that day to just outside of Ogden, Utah. Yeah. And we camped outside of Ogden. And then the next day we made it back to Boise. So other than, ideally, I wouldn't be sitting in a car for so long, because I do think that I had some kind of locked up muscles and different things going on from being in the car, some swollen feet and ankle stuff, but I was falling asleep every afternoon on the 3 days of driving.
I bet.
Involuntarily. Like I could not keep my eyes open. And so the one thing I'm realizing with recovery is this is uncharted territory in a big way for me. Like I said, that every hour past the 10-hour mark is exponentially harder for my body because it's never really seen that before.
Right.
And I'm just being very gracious with, if I need more sleep, I'm still pretty tired, like I'll get the yawns in the afternoons. I wake up feeling like I could just kind of stay in bed a little longer. And my return to, I wouldn't call it training. My return to activity has been very gradual and just very much easy, shorter stuff, eat a lot, sleep a lot, take care of those things. So
how you feeling now? Week and a half out. You feel mostly recovered?
I'm feeling much better. I'm very cautious about doing anything with intensity right now, because I know what it's like to think like physically, I went for a bike ride this morning, felt great. I felt like I could have, hit those hills a little harder. I feel a little spunky. That's all a good sign, but it's also really important to take that with caution and just, okay, you can test the waters a little bit with anything. And my coach is really good at saying, like, if you have any intensity, just see how it feels and don't push anything. Don't force or put pressure on anything. And I think, this recovery process, yes, I just did this huge, epic, crazy event, but I think this is really important for humans to remember in our day-to-day lives. Stress on the body is, whether it's from a crazy 15-hour day or from a work deadline or from a sick kid or whatever you have going on in your life, a bad commute experience, your body sees stress. It doesn't really pay attention to or decipher the source of that stress. It sees stress. And you have to acknowledge that and show yourself some grace when you're coming out of that and when you're dealing with stress.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Great point. So you won't be doing it again, huh?
I don't think so.
Once was enough. Yes. You won't go for a 350.
I can see the seduction in it, because because what you start thinking when you're someone like me is you start picking apart all the things you could have done a little differently, or you might have changed, or you might approach differently. And there's this draw of like, I want to try it again. I want to see if I could do this better. Or I loved meeting the people. I want to, get more of that and whatever. At the same time, this was never on my list of races to do. So it was kind of a spontaneous, like, happenstance. Okay,
Sure. That makes
I'm in my
sense.
situation. I'll do it. And I'm really, really proud of what I did. And I loved the experience, but there's more misery than joy on the day in many ways.
Yeah.
And
That makes sense.
I don't think I would do it again. Now, I would totally go over there and crew for somebody, or, maybe even consider, like, if there was, some friends going and I would do like a shorter version of it or something, I'd probably get roped into something like that. But no, it's not on I highly recommend, if you are intrigued by this and you want to do some big, holy crap gravel race on the best gravel in the world.
Yeah.
They put on a good show, but yeah, I don't think I'll be going back.
Well, thanks for doing this. This has been super fun and really interesting. I mean, I've never done any kind of races at all, so it's all kind of a foreign thing to me, but even just this whole kind of niche, gravel racing thing, completely foreign in such an extreme way. This has been really fun, really interesting. So thanks for sharing, Erin.
Oh, thanks for the interest too. And I hope that it's clear that there are some parallels between the concept of like middleish and moderation, and even these super crazy extreme events. And you have to find some middle road when you embark on these endeavors, and obviously on the day, like you have to learn to be flexible. So,
well, I think even just looking at the extreme event and then sort of like the extreme recovery afterwards, right? It's like we've talked about before. Sometimes it's not the thing you're doing in the moment that's middleish, but it's broader picture that's middleish and moderation. And I think that paints that picture. There's an intensity, so the pendulum has to swing the other way, and we have to be more intense with recovery and mindfulness of taking care of ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Definitely.
Awesome. Thank you so
Yay.
much.
Thank you.
All right. Should I go with the meaning of the mundane? Should I go since you've been doing the talking, and then you can go? Okay.
Sure.
So mine was last night. Actually, I posted a video about this. I went to last night to record a little mobility drill thing for a course I've got out, and I was just going to talk about some things. And did you see this video? By chance?
I don't think so.
Oh, you have to check it out.
Was it the one you were standing on with the TRX? You were standing on the bench doing the one-legged squats?
This is my dog. So I was just in my living room going to do some mobility stuff for this new course I have out. And I get down to do it, and I'm filming, and my dog comes up and has 100% other plans.
It's playtime.
Yeah, it's just like his insistence of like not letting me do what I want to do, and him just wanting snuggles and loves. And it was, everybody was in bed, and it was just kind of this, I mean, I do mobility work most nights. Like I'll just watch something and just do some stretching and some mobility drills and that kind of stuff. And so that's like a pretty mundane thing for me, but just him coming in and being like, nope, I'd like to be in your lap, and I'd like to stand on you, and you're going to love on me now. And so just taking that couple minutes of just loving on the pup was pretty stinking great.
Yeah. It keeps you from getting too roped into like the task at hand. Like, okay, well,
absolutely,
I'm doing this now.
Yep. And it was kind of like, thanks, buddy. I actually needed that. That was
sweet.
Probably better for me.
That's funny. Rally does the same thing. If I get down on the floor and I'm doing any kind of exercise or stretching, he'll just come and lay on me and cuddle up.
Like, you're here for me, right?
Yeah. His face gets like right in my face. He's looking at me. Yeah.
Yeah. You have to check it out. It's pretty funny.
I will. I'll go look at that video. So mine was yesterday, actually. I have resumed some easy runs, and I went out for this trail run just near my house. And I had kind of told myself, like, okay, my intention is to go at least this far. But if I feel good by the time I get to this junction in the trail, I'll go up and, climb up and do this other route that I usually would do. And I had headed out expecting myself to just feel heavy and tired and like running has felt for me for a while.
Sure.
And I actually felt pretty darn good. And I just was in kind of a good mood and just very relaxed and
nice.
Loved being out on the trail. And it was very meaningful because, many times I'll go out for a run and I'm, my history, I've paid attention to pacing and I paid attention to this and feeling strong and whatever. And this had nothing to do with how fast I was going or how strong I climbed that hill or how far I went. It was just being out there for the joy of running because I love to run.
Yeah.
And it was, of course, more meaningful because I have had less running in my life. And so it's just really lovely to know that I still really love this sport, even if I'm slower, even if I don't go as far as I used to. And, I just felt good that day. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Love it. Yay.
Cool. I know. Good stuff.
Well, thank you. This was fun. This was good.
Yeah.
I'm excited for people to hear about your experience.
Thanks everyone for listening. And if you have questions for me beyond what we talked about here, then feel free to mention them in the comments or on a Instagram post or email us middleish@gmail.com. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank y'all. Have a good one.